And today is a little bit different, bringing these kids in here because we are celebrating a victory here at Vision. I'm going to tell you about that in just a minute. This past Monday, Tuesday, I went down to a church planners conference outside of Atlanta that I had gone to last year at this time when I had no idea what we were going to do. God was calling me to be a lead pastor. I didn't know where. I didn't know what it would look like. I didn't know if it would be called Vision. And yes, that really is a name of a church. I know those kids talk about maybe Vision. I said, yeah, Vision, man, that is God's vision lived out. And you know what? I went back to this conference this past Monday, Tuesday, and was talking to leaders from around the country. There was about 500 people there, and they were, of course, asking about our church. And so I'm telling them, hey, man, you guys need to see some of these pictures and hear about our volunteers. And they're like, man, how many people you got? I said, well, I mean, about 120 each week. They're like, what? I said, man, you're not supposed to hit that until like you're open for a year. I said, man, where are these people coming from? I said, I don't know. God's drawing them. We got a great volunteer team. They're looking, they're like, okay, so that backdrop you got, you set that up and down each week? I said, well, no. They said, do you meet in the school? I said, no, man, actually, God's given us a facility. They're like, what? You got a facility? I said, well, hey, if you want to come visit us sometime, come check it out. They said, well, it's kind of a long drive. I said, man, well, then you can watch the messages online. They're like, you got your messages online? I'm like, okay, we're a little advanced for a church plant. You know, we're moving forward at God's pace, and God's drawing people, and God's giving us space, and God's giving us talent. And like that promo video you saw to Alias, that is created in-house by someone on our team. So God is taking tools from within this body to do amazing things. So I come back from Atlanta, and I'm like, I'm so glad we scheduled already to have a party this Sunday because we have much to celebrate. Just like Nehemiah went through this whole process toward a vision and toward a project, we've been on a journey. And we said, okay, guys, we're going to launch in January. And some people said, man, I don't know if we can do that quick. That's a big faith step. There's a lot of risk involved. And are we ready? And we prayed about it and said, God, we think you're ready. And we launched in January. And we've come through our first series called Blueprint. And we said, you know what? Just like Nehemiah and those guys celebrated the victory, we're going to celebrate the victory. And that doesn't mean we've come to the finish line. You know, we're just getting out of the blocks. And again, this isn't a sprint. This is a marathon. And so Vision Church, we truly are committed to leading people to Christ and to helping them live out God's vision for their life. And today we're going to have a party with that. So kids, you going to be excited about some cookies after the service? Okay, how about the adults? Are you excited about cookies? There we go. Okay, well, the adults will be first in line for the cookies. But those kids are quick, nimble, agile. You might get there first. But we do have, afterwards, a little party, little cookies, open house. We'd love for you just to mingle through there and see our preschool and children's environments. But this whole party feel, I tell you, it's great because God does want this to be all of our best hour of our week. That we would come together and celebrate. And you know what? We want it to be something that you could take with you. So if you didn't get it when you came in the back of the chairs is what we call kind of our takeaway card that helps you take some notes today, which is important. But honestly, what's more important is there's some tools on there to help you throughout the week that you can take today's message and unpack it through the week. You can read about Moses. I'm going to talk a little bit about today, but I want you to read about it. You can look in there into the life of Jesus and see how his story connects with Nehemiah's, and you can read some Psalms, and we kind of mix it up so you can spend time with God during the week, and this really is just kind of a catalyst toward it. The time you spend with us is a catalyst to your time during the week that makes a difference in your life and the life of people you live with. So let's talk about where we've been. Because if you walk in and say, man, we missed the whole series. Well, first of all, you can go and watch them online. Let me give you a quick recap. We dug into this life, this man named Nehemiah, and each week we've had kind of a keyword to it. I'll zip through them real quick. The first week was alignment, getting our hearts aligned with God's. All right, the second week, we had a tough one. We talked about waiting, because you know that's never fun. And when you're waiting, God does things in you. The third week, we talked about action. Had this big generator up here, said, you know what? Somebody's got to crank that thing to make it happen. So there's action. The fourth week, we talked about obstacles and opposition. I mean, that was tough. But you know, when we looked at those type of things, we get hope every day that God is our strength. And that next week, we dug into a verse that talked about him being our strength, and our key word was chiseled. And I had, remember, that block of wood and a bowl, and I said, you can get from here to here if you let God do some chiseling in your life. So for 5 weeks, we walked through Nehemiah and come to today. And today, we got a bottom line. And I want you to think through this with me. This bottom line, and it was interesting, because when we headed this direction, I thought our bottom line was just going to be, we need to celebrate victory. But you know what? As I dug into this the last couple weeks and leading to today, God added a second piece to it. And really, our bottom line is, we need to celebrate the victory, and we need to commit to protect the vision. Because as we go forward, this vision, both as our church, but also in our lives, the visions that God gives us to live out, we can't just celebrate them and put them on a shelf. We celebrate them, and then we have to be committed to protect that vision. And I'll tell you this, as the lead pastor of Vision Church, I am giving my life to protect the vision of this church. And the reality is, I want some people to go there with me. They'll say, you know what? I also will commit to protect that vision. Because you know what? That trickles down. So in your week, I think then you're stronger at protecting the vision of your marriage, the vision of your family, the vision of your finances or your time or your health or whatever personal visions God gives you. I think we can motivate each other so that when you come in on Sundays and see a church like this that is committed to protecting a vision, it will inspire you in the rest of your week. So I want to look today in some parts of Nehemiah, and today's visual is kind of a strange one. This is a flashlight. It's not a normal flashlight. It's called a mag light. And this mag light, as it ties into our bottom line, kind of does two things. I mean, the first thing is celebrating. I'm like, you know what? Man, when I want to celebrate some kids, I put them in a spotlight. And I'm like, Daniel, man, you're in the spotlight. I'm shining on you. I'm celebrating you. You're like, okay, I can get that. But man, what does this have to do with protecting the vision? Well, my time to pray is to get up in the mornings and walk around my neighborhood. And usually I'm doing that before the sun comes up. So of course I need some light just in case cars coming. I got to kind of let them know. But you know, the reality is here in Gaston County, we got some dogs on the loose. And when I'm walking around my neighborhood in the morning and I come walking and I hear something stirring in the bushes, I don't want some little pocket flashlight. I need my mag light. So if he comes out, he knows there's a force to be reckoned with here. And it's not just my prayer life, it's my mag light. And this truly is a tool, maybe to protect my vision, but maybe just to kind of protect me as I walk around my neighborhood. But I thought, you know what? This is our visual this week. To shine on something we celebrate and to protect what we need to protect. Now let's talk about Nehemiah. Nehemiah, you know, his story comes out in a book self-titled called Nehemiah. Now Nehemiah, he followed God with passion. And I believe that came from different people that came before him that followed God with passion. So one that I want to talk about for a moment is Moses. And again, I want you to unpack it this week through your takeaway card, because Moses, you may know his story, even if you hadn't been in church before. Say, man, some old guy with long hair, I guess, that kind of got called by God to do something to rescue somebody. Okay, Moses was a man called by God to go and set a whole group of people free. So he actually was called by God, and even if you've never been in church, you've probably heard of the burning bush. You might not know exactly what that story is. The reality is, Moses was spoken to by God through a burning bush and told to go to the man in power, the Pharaoh, to go to him and say, let my people go. Now you imagine if you feel like you got that message today and was supposed to go into the White House to the president to deliver a message like that. That's pretty intimidating, especially when the Pharaoh was going to look at Moses and say, let your people go, I'm going to let your head go. You're out of here, you're dead, great pressure. And Moses said, if I'm going to do that, who do I even tell Pharaoh is sending me? And God says, I am. And Moses is like, help me understand that. And God basically says, look, I wasn't, or I'm not coming, or I was or used to be, or I'm going to be. He says, I am. From the beginning of time, I am. To the end of time, I am. And when you go before Pharaoh, and if you're scared and you don't know what to say or what to do, you say, you know who sent me? I am sent me. So we see that in the life of Moses. And Nehemiah, as he's gone through this journey and had fear at times and had opposition at times and overcome obstacles, and I think he looks back and says, okay, the guys before me that believed in I am, I also believe in I am. So let's take a look at Nehemiah's story. The first thing we see is this completion of the project. All right, turn with me, if you got your Bible or whatever you like to use to look at, Nehemiah chapter 6, and we'll have the verses on the screen, and if you don't have it. But Nehemiah chapter 6, we see the completion of the project. And you know, if you're like me, it feels great to get to the end of a project. I think about some of the guys in our church. We work on projects, you know, we move stuff in here, and you get done, and you check it off, and it's like, man, that is so satisfying to complete a project. So Nehemiah chapter 6, let's look at verses 15 and 16. So the wall, this is this wall around Jerusalem they were building, the wall was completed on the 25th of Elul in 52 days. When all our enemies heard about this, all the surrounding nations were afraid and lost their self-confidence because they realized that this work had been done with the help of our God. And don't you love that statement? This work had been done with the help of our God. I go down to Atlanta and I'm telling people about Vision Church, and they know this work has been done with the help of our God. We could never manufacture something like this. Just like Nehemiah never could have rallied people to rebuild a wall on their own, it was done with the help of their God. And in terms of vision, when we opened on January 25th, a lot of us said, you know what? I'm proud of the chance that God gave each of us to do this, but we know it's with the help of our God that this happened. Now, the second thing we see is the dedication of the project. The dedication of this project. Flip over a couple chapters to 12, and Nehemiah chapter 12, and I'm going to kind of skim through this because it's kind of long, but it gives you a little taste of the party they threw. Because now you kids, every Sunday, we pretty much know you're having a party because we hear it kind of like thumping through the walls. So we love that you guys are back there having a party, celebrating in Viz Kids, that we have created environments that you can love. And so adults, when we think about, man, how we celebrate, I look at Nehemiah chapter 12. Start in verse 27. It says, at the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, the Levites were sought out from where they lived and were brought to Jerusalem to celebrate joyfully the dedication with songs of thanksgiving and with the music of cymbals, harps, lyres, and electric guitars. No, okay, just make sure you're paying attention. No, but they didn't have that. But you know what? We're going to use it, and we're going to use our vocal talent, and we're going to use what we have to celebrate Him. And so you see they said in verse 28, the singers also were brought together from the region of Jerusalem, from these different places, from these different people. Down in verse 30 you see, when the priests and Levites had purified themselves ceremonially, they purified the people, the gates, and the wall. And you know what you see there? You see people choosing to be purified. Choosing to say, God, we want to present ourselves to you as something special, as something different. There's this word consecrate that says, it means set apart and separate. And that's what we've chosen here at Vision to be, is set apart and separate for Him to tell people about the good news of Jesus. Now, you continue down through 31. I had the leaders of Judah go up on top of the wall. I also assigned 2 large choirs to give thanks. Man, that's old school, isn't it? But you know what? Here at Vision, we're going to have a choir sometimes. Sometimes it'll be a kids choir. Sometimes it'll be an adult choir. Because you know what? We want to celebrate. And when you flip on through, you see the different people, different places. You go down, say to verse 38. The second choir proceeded in the opposite direction. These guys are walking around the wall. You remember the week we talked about all the gates? They talk here about the gates. They said, I followed them on top of the wall, together with half the people, past the tower of the ovens to the broad wall, over the gate of Ephraim, the Jeshanah gate, the fish gate, the tower of Hananel, the tower of the 100, as far as the sheep gate. If you weren't here that Sunday, what we talked about was in Jerusalem, they were rebuilding this wall for protection, for confidence and strength. And at all these different gates, they assigned different families to them so they would take great pride in their work. And so you imagine on Celebration Day, they walk around that wall, and you got the Wallace family over here pointing out, and that's the wall we did. You got, the Vanderbilt saying, remember ours was the horse gate, because my wife, she loves horses. We got the horse gate. We had one family that had the dung gate. I know they faithfully, they took it. They said, we will repair the dung gate. And they did it faithfully. But you see through there, go down to verse 43. It says, on that day, they offered great sacrifices, rejoicing because God had given them great joy. The women and children also rejoiced. The sound of rejoicing in Jerusalem could be heard far away. And you know what? Our desire here is that people will sense that in vision and say, what's going on over there? Why are they so excited? Why are they sacrificing? Why are they singing? Why are people out there serving in the day that there's freezing rain or 7-degree weather? We say, you know what? We're rejoicing because God is leading this project. So you flip on down to our next one. Our third piece, it kind of shifts because there's threats. There's threats to the project and vision. You're like, wait a second. We talked about obstacles and opposition a couple weeks ago. I thought we were past that. The threats never stop. Not if you've got something you're moving forward on that God wants to accomplish. The threats never stop. So flip back with me to chapter 6. Remember, they were just completing this project. And in chapter 6, we pick back up in verse 17. It says, also in those days, the nobles of Judah were sending many letters to Tobiah. Now, who's Tobiah? If you remember the week we talked about obstacles and opposition, we mentioned some guys with some crazy names. Sanballat and Tobiah was one of them, and these guys with weird names. And think, okay, Tobiah, why is somebody contacting Tobiah? Because you know what? There were people in that area of Jerusalem that were still trying to do business with Tobiah. Their families were still intermarrying. They were still doing business with him. So they were basically kind of consorting with maybe the enemy or the threat that was opposing what they were doing. And so what you see there that says they were sending many letters to Tobiah, and replies from Tobiah were coming to them. For many in Judah were under oath to him. And it goes on to tell about the relationships, the connections to him. And Nehemiah's like, wait a second. Why are we hanging out with this guy who's a threat to us? Because as we are committed to carrying this vision forward, the threats are going to come. But you know what? We need that kind of sin outside of our camp. So what they've done is they've started kind of wringing their hands in sin outside the camp. Now you flip over to the next piece here. Responsibility to the project and vision. That's our fourth blank. Responsibility to the project and vision. Because the crazy thing is these guys are going to let Tobiah get inside their camp. So you flip back over to Nehemiah 13. This is the last piece we look at in Nehemiah. And in Nehemiah 13, picking up at verse 6, says, while all this was going on, Nehemiah, was not in Jerusalem. Because he'd completed the project. He headed back to his job with the king. And he was kind of hearing back from the guys how it was going. It says, I was not in Jerusalem, for in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes, king of Babylon, I'd returned to the king. Now listen to this. Sometime later, I asked his permission and came back to Jerusalem. And here I learned about the evil thing Eliashib had done in providing Tobiah a room in the courts of the house of God. You know what this means? They rebuilt the wall. They had the temple. And they had some rooms in there dedicated to bring in offerings. And you know what they did? Eliashib, the high priest, he said, oh, this room's empty. Let's let Tobiah basically rent it out. Let's let him use it to run business. And Nehemiah's like, what? The sin that was outside our camp that we tried so hard to keep out, you just let it in? You just let him in? You let him into the holy, consecrated area that we fought so hard to get back? And look what Nehemiah does. He says in verse 8, I was greatly displeased and threw all Tobiah's household goods out of the room. I gave orders to purify the rooms, and then I put back into them the equipment of the house of God with the grain offerings and the incense. Who's that sound like? Man, that sounds like Jesus. That sounds like Jesus in the New Testament when he comes into holy ground and finds people in there desecrating it, and he's turning tables over, he's throwing coins, he's kicking people out with a holy anger that Nehemiah predated. And Nehemiah said, I am is my God. I am is the one who deserves this space to be taken care of. I will not let sin be here in this camp. And he has a holy anger that I believe is ours to carry on through the responsibility of defending this vision. Now think about this with me. We're starting to kind of land this plane for the Nehemiah Blueprint series. And I want you to think about the Son of God. Remember I said week 1, alignment? Jesus, many, many years ago, as he looked down and saw Adam and Eve sin, he saw a problem. And Jesus said, you know what? I have a vision for solving that problem. I have a vision for coming down there and giving people a chance to reestablish a relationship with the Father. So Jesus aligned his heart with the Father's heart. Jesus had to wait. He waited thousands of years. And in fact, when finally it was his time to come to earth, he waited many more years until he had the freedom to start his ministry, and the Father said, go. You got 3 years. And Jesus worked and invested and poured into people, and in a whole waiting process, he didn't sit on his hands. He moved toward the next piece of action. It's like we talked about, week 3 in Nehemiah of action. Jesus, in the 3 years he had, he trained people. He challenged people. He healed and taught and did amazing things so people would see God's power is real, and I am is still the God that reigns. Jesus caused action to happen. Now, you know this. Jesus, he had to overcome obstacles and opposition. That was the 4th thing we see in Nehemiah. And Jesus, he leaned into the obstacles and opposition that came his way. And he said, the vision I'm going after is too important to turn away from that. So in fact, then, we see that Jesus was shaped during the process. You remember that bowl went from wood to a bowl because it was shaped and chiseled? Jesus was in the desert. Jesus went through fasting and he was shaped. Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane. Remember, he started out saying, Father, if you could take this away. And by the end of it, he said, Father, I'm ready. Jesus was shaped in those moments. And in fact, as he carried that cross up Calvary, he was physically reshaped, to where people looked at him and said, what kind of vision is he believing in that he would let himself be shaped like that? And then, praise God, part 6, Jesus celebrated the victory when he was up on that cross and people didn't understand. He said, just Father, forgive them. And he died. And 3 days later, he rose from the dead. He celebrated the victory, walking around this earth for several other weeks, talking to people so they could see, look, I'm alive. I defeated sin. I will celebrate this victory, and I will commit to protect this vision, so that when you come and accept this gift of salvation, I ask you to protect my vision, because there's many more who need to know about the gift I've given, about the vision I had for salvation. So in Nehemiah, we see a parallel to our Savior. Jesus walked through all those pieces so that we would come to today, and in fact, God would say, you know what? I am to Moses. I am to Nehemiah. I am to my son. I am to you. So that leads me to ask 2 questions to 2 different groups. My first group is the people that are here today that say, you know what, yeah, I'm following God. I believe in Jesus. I said, great. Okay, let me ask you a question then. The question is, will you protect this vision? Will you be a part of protecting Jesus' vision? Because think about this. In chapter 7 of Nehemiah, they talk about a man named Hananiah. And in fact, they say about Hananiah that he was known as fearing the Lord more than most people. I tell you, what a great reputation to have. So I guess my first question to you is, what if everybody here feared the Lord the way you do? Would that be good or would that be bad? And again, this is rhetorical. That you sit there and think, I don't know, with the degree I fear the Lord, what if everybody here feared the Lord that way? The second one, how about what if everybody served the Lord the way I do? You sit there and think, if everybody did that much or did that little, what would that be like? If everybody served the Lord the way I serve the Lord? Third, and this is a challenge, what if everybody gave the way I gave? What if everybody took parts of our family finances, like Scott was talking about, and I gave it? What if everybody gave the way I gave? and we had nothing, or we had abundance. And then fourth, man, what if everybody invited people to church the way I did? And these cards, we have provided an easy way for you to get someone here next Sunday or the next Sunday that you'd say, man, my church is doing a series called Alias, talking about Jesus, this guy that people are still talking about 2,000 years after he died. Why don't you come with me? So my question to you is, what if everybody invited the way you invited? What would our church look like? Now, to the second group, someone who walks in today says, man, I don't know about Jesus, hadn't heard about him, or honestly, that really doesn't matter to me. I guess my question to you is, have you ever decided to have a personal relationship with God? Because you walk in and you see all this energy and people and fun stuff we're doing and Bibles we're talking about. And I guess my question to you is, have you ever got to a point where you've thought about I am, this God who was there with Moses and Nehemiah and Jesus and is here with us? This is not just something we're getting excited about. This is real, that the God I am is here. And so my question to you would be, have you ever come into a relationship with I am? So as we close today, we're going to have a song that gives you a chance to respond to that. Whether you're in the first group, you say, well, God, I want to be a bigger part of what you're doing here. Or, God, I want to know you for the first time. I want to have a relationship with you. Because again, this bottom line about celebrating is wonderful. That we celebrate the victory. But you know what? There's a piece that comes with it, that we're called to protect this vision. And as David comes and plays, I want you to close your eyes. I'm going to take a minute and we're going to pray.